In this video, let's take a look at some of Lightroom Classic's global adjustment tools. Now I am in the library module and I have an image up here captured of Mount Sopris in Colorado. And the first place to begin is with the basic tab. My profile is set to camera standard, so it's pulling my picture style directly from my camera, which works perfectly. White balance, there's nothing neutral really in this image that I could use the eyedropper on. But it's always nice to take a look. That's a little cool, a little warm. So I am warming it up just a tiny bit. And I think I'm just going to add just a hint of magenta in there. I always like that little magenta cast with scenic images. I have a really good exposure overall. And so I'm not going to touch the exposure slider or the contrast slider. My preference is to, if possible, leave those alone and do more micro adjustments with the down next 4 sliders. I'm going to bump up the highlights a little bit, and I am watching my histogram up here in the upper right. So my highlights could come up pretty far if I wanted to, but I don't want to lose that information in the cloud. So I might just come up a little bit. Same with the whites, don't want to blow out any information there. There's another video where I do local adjustments and I kind of handle the clouds a little bit more with that. And let's see, I am someone that likes contrast, so I might bring my blacks down just a tiny bit, but still open my shadows, so that gives me a nice black point. Now, if I do want to see what I'm clipping, I can always hold down the Option Alt key, and if I grab my highlight slider, it's like I could go pretty far without clipping any information. What about the whites? Yeah, you can see how fast I could clip something in the sky. So let's drop that back down. Even though I'm not clipping any information, it just doesn't work to do that. So I'm going to bring that back down and I'll bring the highlights down a little bit. So that's one of those scenarios though. Just because I'm not clipping information doesn't mean I want to go quite that far. I like a little bit of clarity. The present sliders are all mid-tone contrast, just a little bit way of going about it differently. Add a little bit of vibrancy. You go too much and it's obviously way too far. We want to give a natural look to the image. So the basic tab looks pretty good to me. You can go through it pretty quickly. Tone curve, I am a fan of contrast. So I have a habit, I'm an old Photoshop person, so I'm going to add a tiny bit of contrast here. Not much, just a little bit. Let's take a look at the color mixer. And there's so many ways to use the color mixer at this point. This is kind of the standard. You can be on HSL where you can see the hue for each one of the colors, the saturation, the luminance. If you want to click all, you can see the whole long list here. For me, that's a lot of information. You can also narrow it down and say, hey, I just want to work with the reds right now and get the hue, saturation, and luminance for the reds. And you can imagine you can get all of them. One of the things that's fairly new is the point color option, where I can grab the eyedropper, come into the image and say, okay, I'm going to click right here. And then I can start adjusting the hue, the saturation, and the luminosity in a little bit different way. So, and just more tools to work the way you want to work, which is what's really great about this is we have so many options that we can bump up the saturation. Whoa, not that far. Sometimes it's easy to go a little too far, but let's see what we do with the mixer here. With the hue, the blue, well, I think I'm going to drop the luminance on the blue. It was feeling just a little too, I don't know, sea blue, just a little bit too much for me on there. But these orange tones down here, let's see, I'm going to grab the target tool to see, is it orange? Yeah, a little orange, a little red. I'm going to bring those up. It's also hitting the sky. So I want to be careful. And as soon as I start seeing this happen, it kind of tells you that, well, maybe I should doing these adjustments, some of them more in the local, because I am getting the sky up here. But that overall is looking pretty good. Any reds that I want to adjust? Sometimes, got to be careful. We can see that line appearing. So I'm just going to double click, reset that. So nice point with the color mixer. Probably not going to do anything with color grading, but we definitely could. The detail, with sharpening, we could do a whole new video on that. Perhaps we will. One of the keys is when you're going to do any kind of noise reduction or sharpening is just to make sure you're zoomed in at 100%. If you're zoomed out, you really won't see it. I'm just going to stick with my defaults right now. I think my ISO was around 800, which would tell me I probably don't need too much adjustments. ISO 800. It's all my different settings. You can see this was at 6:45 p.m. So I think noise reduction, defaults are probably pretty good right now. I do normally dive in there a little bit. I think I will add just a tiny vignette. Personally, I like vignettes when you don't notice them, but they're there. It's like, that's obviously too much. That's, a little different. So I'm just going to add a little tiny vignette that you don't see there's a vignette, but we are being drawn a little bit more to the center. So that's pretty much how fast I'll go through global adjustments. And again, there is another video on local adjustments and masking.